What if the blood in your veins is a part of a war that predates time itself? This is not merely a tale from the far past. Rather, it is a dark conflict etched in the very fabric of humanity, one that has influenced global history. The concept of the seed of the serpent suggests a genetic and spiritual struggle that was woven into the very fabric of humanity's beginnings. This war has subtly impacted history, culture, and religion in ways that most people could never have predicted. Although the phrase "seed of the serpent" may seem like a myth or legend, the Ethiopian Bible reveals a significant truth in a way that few have seen before. In contrast to the well-known tales found in the Western Bible, the Ethiopian texts depict a historical narrative in which bloodlines are not only about ancestry, but also about the constant conflict between good and evil, light and darkness, and spirit and flesh. This conflict, which reverberates through the generations and shapes who we are today, is fought not with swords or armies, but rather with heritage and destiny. Inner doubts, moral dilemmas, and incomprehensible conflicts are just a few of the challenges that plague modern life and frequently feel personal or even invisible. What if a lot of these difficulties are mirror images of that age-old conflict that is still going on within us? The seed of the serpent is not limited to antiquity. It is present in the struggles we encounter both internally and externally. It calls into question our conceptions of faith, identity, and even history. The Ethiopian Bible serves as a key to reveal these secrets, which heightens the appeal of this tale. This ancient scripture has been preserving versions of the biblical story that deviate from popular texts for centuries, illuminating long-forgotten or ignored mysteries. The Ethiopian Bible alters our preconceived notions about our ancestry by disclosing a hidden history of humanity's spiritual conflicts. Get ready to have your preconceived notions challenged as we embark on this journey into the seed of the serpent. This is a story that speaks to what runs through our veins, what molds our lives, and what struggles we all face in one way or another. So it is not just for academics or theologians. The Ancient Bloodline War is still going strong today, just waiting to be discovered and comprehended. It is not limited to dusty old texts. Make sure to subscribe to the Ethiopian Bible channel if you're interested in learning the truth that has been concealed for centuries. Remember to click the bell icon so you don't miss the story that will challenge your preconceived notions about your own ancestry. The truth you are about to learn will forever alter your perspective on the world, and this is only the beginning. Before we go further, consider this. Would you be interested in learning the truth about a hidden conflict in your own family, or would you be afraid of what it might entail? Tell us what you think in the space provided below. You might be surprised by what you learn. When Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, the world was young and appeared to be free from suffering and strife. This is when the story starts. But when the serpent showed up, everything was different. God describes a profound and enduring animosity between the serpent and the woman's seed in Genesis 3:15, a passage that is frequently referred to as the first prophecy. This was a proclamation of a continuing spiritual struggle that would reverberate across the generations, not merely a curse hurled out of rage. Imagine Adam and Eve as individuals caught in a state of uncertainty, hope, and terror, rather than merely as far-off characters in a tale. More than just a straightforward temptation, Eve's encounter with the serpent was a test that rocked the core of her conception of right and wrong. The serpent was crafty, speaking in a way that challenged and perverted reality, introducing uncertainty where there had been assurance. Eve had a difficult time making the decision to listen because she was unsure of the consequences. Adam's part is just as moving. He and Eve coexisted in a world they were instructed to maintain, but they were abruptly thrust into a world marred by disobedience and grief. He struggled to reconcile the loss of innocence and the harsh new reality that the harmony they knew had been broken, not only with the external serpent, but also with the internal turmoil. Although it is frequently disregarded, the emotional turmoil of this moment is crucial to comprehending the severity of the conflict at hand. This prophecy's reference to the seed has multiple meanings, including both spiritual and, some people think, literal. Spiritually speaking, it symbolizes the continuous conflict between forces of good and evil, the descendants of the woman who worked toward righteousness against the influence of the serpent's seed, which stands for deceit, corruption, and rebellion. Throughout the Bible, this duality is depicted, showing humanity torn between these two diametrically opposed forces. However, when we look beyond the Western Bible to the Ethiopian Bible, which provides a different viewpoint on this age-old conflict, the story becomes even more complicated. The Ethiopian texts delve deeper into the bloodlines themselves, implying a hidden spiritual and genetic conflict within humanity's origins, whereas the Western Bible primarily uses the seed of the serpent as a symbol of evil or the devil's influence. This story is about actual families, real descendants, and a conflict that has profoundly influenced history and fate. It is not just symbolic. The serpent is portrayed in the Ethiopian Bible as a strong force that has a lasting impact on particular bloodlines rather than merely as a creature or a representation of temptation. In this instance, the serpent's seed symbolizes a lineage characterized by spiritual darkness and defiance of the divine order, making it more than just a metaphor. The lineage of the woman's seed, on the other hand, is meant to restore equilibrium and carry the light. This focus on bloodlines gives the narrative a deeper level of complexity, where the conflict is woven into the very fabric of people's identities rather than being merely internal or spiritual. The Ethiopian Bible's depiction of Cain and Seth's descendants, the two sons of Adam and Eve, is one striking example. In these texts, Cain, who is notorious for his murderous deed, is frequently associated with the serpent's seed, signifying a corrupt family that stands in the way of God's plan. Seth's descendants, on the other hand, stand in for the faithful lineage, the woman's seed, charged with maintaining morality and conserving the authentic knowledge of God. This bloodline division highlights the ancient battle mentioned in Genesis 3:15, demonstrating that it was a genuine conflict that was passed down through the generations rather than merely a prophecy. This viewpoint gives the original text additional, frequently overlooked levels of meaning. The Ethiopian Bible encourages readers to view history from a different perspective, one in which spiritual warfare and genealogy coexist, in contrast to the Western Bible's emphasis on moral lessons and spiritual symbolism. This point of view raises issues regarding identity, fate, and the nature of good and evil in the world, challenging many conventional interpretations. It's also important to consider the serpent's spiritual meaning. Serpents were regarded as symbols of power, knowledge, and danger in many ancient cultures. The serpent's craftiness serves as a warning and a clue to the more powerful forces at play in the biblical tale. It is linked to the beginning of human freedom and choice, but it also symbolizes the origin of deceit and chaos. The ongoing conflict between these conflicting realities, order and disorder, truth and falsehood, is what drives the serpent and the woman's seed to be hostile toward one another. This story's enduring appeal stems from its connection to the core of the human condition. Every generation's conflicts between temptation and virtue, corruption and purity, destruction and creation, can be compared to the conflict between the serpent's and the woman's seeds. The weight of all human history and spiritual strife is contained in this ancient prophecy, which is concealed in a single verse. A question of identity lies at the core of this. In this battle, who are we? Which seed is inside of us? According to the Ethiopian Bible, these are actual, living realities that are encoded in our blood and spirit rather than merely abstract concepts. It pushes readers to see past outward, manifestations, and consider the origins of their own hardships, ancestry, and convictions, we can get a better understanding of the meaning of the seed of the serpent by contrasting these two versions, the Ethiopian Bible's genealogical emphasis and the Western Bible's symbolic approach. It's a tale that defies easy explanation, challenging us to solve its riddles and comprehend the unseen conflicts that have molded humanity from the dawn of time. The story's development serves as a reminder that the biblical seed of the serpent's beginnings are more than just an old legend. They are a living reality that is mirrored in the intricacies of human history and nature. The conflict first alluded to in Genesis is still playing out subtly inside each of us, reshaping the world in ways we are only now beginning to understand. Long ago, before the world as we know it began to take shape, there were strong beings called the Watchers, angels who were supposed to keep watch over and mentor humanity. These angels did not, however, stay true to their divine mission. Rather, they crossed a line that was never supposed to be crossed when they came down from the heavens and took human wives, lured by desire and rebellion. The forbidden union of the divine and the mortal was a secret that would forever alter the path of history. These Watchers were not your typical angels. They were powerful beings with strength and knowledge far beyond human capabilities. They mixed their essence with human women to create NEPHILIM, a race that had never been seen before. These children were giants, tall beings whose very existence evoked fear and wonder. Their blood was a peculiar concoction of human frailty and divine power, warped by disobedience and corruption. The weight of this unnatural birth, a fusion of earthly decay and celestial grandeur, was carried by the NEPHILIM. Imagine the world in those prehistoric times when rumors of giants prowling the landscapes sparked awe and fear. Despite their reputed extraordinary strength and intelligence, the Nephilim's hearts were frequently tainted by the wicked impulses passed down from their fallen forefathers. They rose to prominence as warriors and rulers, gaining power over many nations and peoples. The harmony between heaven and earth was threatened by their corrupt bloodlines, which upended the natural order. This union had significant spiritual ramifications. The secrets of heaven and earth, which were never intended for mortal minds, had been revealed to humanity by the Watchers. This knowledge led to widespread wickedness and rebellion, corrupting not only the Nephilim, but also humanity as a whole. Once a place of peace, the earth was corrupted by bloodshed and violence. These giants served as a continual reminder that there was a spiritual conflict going on beneath the surface, one that was fought in both heaven and on earth between light and darkness. The Nephilim differed physically from all living things in the modern world. According to ancient writings, they were enormous giants who occasionally grew to heights beyond human understanding. They were renowned for their strength, which allowed them to accomplish things that no regular man could. However, great power also brought with it great destruction. Their conceit endangered the foundation of creation, and their acts tainted the land. These giants were feared by people because they were perceived as both gods and monsters, beings that were partially divine, but not quite human. According to the legends that have been passed down through the ages, heroes have risen to face these powerful creatures who had gone beyond their limits in battle against the Nephilim. These stories are not just myths. They are echoes of a hidden past in which human weakness and divine rebellion clashed to form the ancient world. Because the Nephilim symbolized an unbalanced world, a marriage of heaven and earth gone wrong, the fear they evoked was equal to the awe they evoked. The Watchers and Nephilim story is told in the Ethiopian Bible with a special richness and detail that highlights the seriousness of this spiritual decay. The Ethiopian scriptures examine these giants' impact in great detail and present them as significant figures in the unfolding drama of human history, in contrast to other texts that only mention them in passing. Their existence was not merely incidental, rather, it was a major theme that helped to explain a large portion of the world's subsequent wickedness and chaos. A deeper spiritual truth, the perils of stepping over divine boundaries and combining things that belong apart, is also symbolized by this forbidden union. The Nephilim are a warning woven into the very fabric of ancient tradition, representing the results of disobeying the natural order. Their ancestry serves as a reminder that when power is combined with immorality, it can lead to destruction and that the world can descend into chaos. Stories and legends about giants and fallen angels that allude to a lost period of history in which divine beings roamed the earth and influenced human destiny still carry the echoes of the Nephilim's legacy. Their story arouses our curiosity and tests our comprehension of the spiritual realm, urging us to see past appearances and contemplate the invisible conflicts that still impact humanity. A hidden aspect of spiritual warfare, a struggle not just between souls but also between bloodlines, power, and destiny, is revealed by this old story of the Watchers and their descendants. It opens a window into a world where the sacred and the profane collide with disastrous results, making us consider the causes of evil and the limits of divine intervention. The Nephilim are more than just legendary giants. They represent a cosmic conflict that predates time and continues to reverberate in the enigmas of human life. The conflict between divine and corrupted bloodlines has been woven throughout human history since the dawn of civilization, influencing kingdoms, empires, and even the destiny of entire nations. Powerful bloodlines, those who carried the legacy of the Watchers and the Nephilim within them, and those who opposed their evil influence were all manifestations of this hidden war, which was more than just a spiritual conflict fought in invisible realms. Scripture, tradition, and the very history of human rule all bear witness to the frequent collisions between these ancient forces over many centuries. Ethiopian tradition describes this battle as a dynamic and continuous struggle that influenced the fates of peoples and rulers, rather than just as a myth. These bloodlines were far from extinct or relegated to obscurity following the flood, according to the Ethiopian Bible's distinctive texts and deeper insights. Rather, they persisted in making their presence known, influencing powerful dynasties and influencing events in the background. This was a battle waged in secret, one in which the intrusion of tainted, disobedient blood continually threatened the integrity of divine ancestry. Think about the legends of ancient monarchs who claimed to be descended from divine or semi-divine ancestors and who were vested with power that was bestowed not only by earthly right but also by divine mandate. As inheritors of that powerful, conflicted blood, these rulers frequently traced their ancestry back to individuals associated with the Watchers or the Nephilim. Such claims were always assertions of authority, legitimacy, and cosmic significance, rather than mere vanity. These bloodlines influenced the rise and fall of empires, with each conflict and conquest marking a new phase in the war that was developing. Scripture also depicted the conflict between those who followed divine law and those who succumbed to corruption as an epic battle, reflecting the tension between these bloodlines. These opposing forces, champions of righteousness opposing tyrants who sprang from the corrupted seed, were embodied by rulers and nations described in ancient texts. These tales are more than just metaphors. They allude to actual conflicts that occurred on battlefields and thrones where bloodlines shaped not only a people's leadership, but also their spiritual fate. According to ancient Ethiopian tradition, certain families and clans were tasked with defending the divine bloodline and sacred knowledge from forces that aimed to destroy or corrupt it. This guardianship was not passive. It frequently involved conflict, sacrifice, and vigilance. In order to fulfill the promise of divine restoration, it was believed that the sacred blood was the key to humanity's salvation and that it had to be preserved. In light of this, the opposing corrupted blood attempted to expand its sphere of influence by entwining itself with kingdoms and directing power in the direction of dominance and spiritual darkness. The way this drama plays out throughout history is remarkably consistent. This bloodline influence can be seen in the ancient empires of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Horn of Africa. Kings who professed divine ancestry, priests who possessed secret knowledge, and conflicts fought not just for territory but also for spiritual supremacy. For instance, it is customary to assume that the Ethiopian royal lineage is descended from the union of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This bloodline is both entangled in this larger cosmic conflict and charged with sacred purpose. A living representation of the constant struggle between light and darkness ingrained in human ancestry, this lineage was both political and spiritual. Conflicts between these bloodlines have frequently been linked to periods of significant upheaval throughout history. More than just power struggles, revolutions, invasions, and dynastic changes were manifestations of the underlying spiritual war in which the divine seed battled to reclaim its proper place and the corrupted seed attempted to impose itself. Like a slow-burning fire, the tension increased, erupting into open conflict when the balance shifted and subsiding into silent vigilance when one side briefly gained the upper hand. According to Ethiopian texts and ancient scriptures, this bloodline conflict is cyclical, recurring over many generations with no simple solution. In this age-old conflict, new heroes, villains, and battles emerged with each new era. The stories themselves turned into coded messages that warned that the war was still going on, unseen but very real, and preserved knowledge of it for future generations. The traditional understanding of ancient empires as purely political or military phenomena is called into question by this hidden history. Rather, it exposes them as spiritual battlefields where the descendants of those who possessed the divine seed engaged in a bloody struggle with those tainted by the Watcher's uprising. On battlefields, in royal courts, and in the hearts of those torn between these opposing legacies, the drama unfolded. This ancient bloodline conflict had an impact on religion, culture, and even the idea of kingship itself over the ages. Leaders were frequently evaluated based on their lineage, which was seen as either a strength or a weakness of these long-standing alliances. In actuality, the power struggles that molded nations were conflicts for humanity's soul, waged by bloodlines bearing the burden of both a corrupted and a divine heritage. The rise and fall of empires throughout history take on new significance when this hidden war is understood. It depicts a world in which the fate of nations was shaped not only by alliances and armies, but also by the invisible spiritual heritage that ran through the veins of both kings and commoners. A story written in flesh and spirit, the Ancient Bloodline War is still being told beneath the surface of history, just waiting to be fully revealed. The richness and depth with which the Ethiopian Bible recounts the Ancient Bloodline War sets it apart from Western translations. The Ethiopian canon contains a wider range of writings, texts that provide vivid details about the Watchers, the Nephilim, and the ongoing spiritual conflict woven into humanity's origin, in contrast to many Western texts which frequently condense or omit certain narratives. This greater preservation is not a coincidence. Rather, it is a reflection of Ethiopia's special role as a custodian of long-standing customs that have been lost or changed over the ages in other places. Books like Enoch and Jubilees, which offer vital insights into these unseen conflicts and offer layers of meaning that Western readers hardly ever experience, are part of the Ethiopian Bible's expanded canon. These texts describe fallen angels, their forbidden unions with human women, and the hybrid children that resulted, whose legacy has had a significant impact on human history. The Ethiopian Church is the living embodiment of these timeless truths, steeped in an ongoing tradition that dates back almost 2 millennia. Its oral teachings, liturgy, and rituals have preserved knowledge that goes beyond the Bible. The relationship between sacred texts and everyday life is still close-knit and palpable in Ethiopian culture. The Church considers itself to be the keeper of divine wisdom, charged with preserving not only religious doctrine, but also the spiritual legacy ingrained in ancestries and histories. Priests and academics have painstakingly preserved these tales over the ages, making sure that the spiritual conflict concealed in the texts is never forgotten or misinterpreted. Because of this continuous preservation, Ethiopia has been able to preserve a worldview that acknowledges the richness and depth of the biblical story, a worldview that takes into account both the spiritual and material aspects of this age-old conflict. The holistic approach is what distinguishes the Ethiopian viewpoint. It views the bloodline conflict as a living reality that is intricately entwined with identity, culture, and faith, rather than as a remote myth or lone prophecy. In Western Christianity, where the emphasis frequently stays narrowly on salvation and morality without fully engaging the larger cosmic battle described in the Ethiopian texts, this understanding challenges many presumptions. Viewers who embrace this more comprehensive revelation acquire a new perspective on biblical history that recognizes a hidden spiritual dimension actively influencing human affairs. The age-old conflict between the serpents and the woman's seeds is viewed as a continuous force influencing the present and the future, rather than merely a far-off incident. A re-examination of spiritual warfare is also encouraged by this singular revelation. The teachings of the Ethiopian Bible show a real generational conflict based on bloodlines and divine destinies, rather than seeing struggles only as abstract or metaphorical. It depicts a world in which spirituality and history are closely intertwined, with the spiritual realities of today still bearing the imprint of those historic unions. This viewpoint offers a significant change for those who are looking for a more complete truth. It challenges believers to see past well-known stories and take part in a spiritual conflict that is both timeless and contemporary. The Ethiopian Bible thus preserves a worldview that does not distinguish between the sacred and the commonplace, the spiritual and the historical, and the cosmic and the individual. It does this by preserving more than just stories. It pushes viewers to view the Bible as more than just a text. Rather, it is a living account of a conflict that is still going on, concealed beneath the surface of the well-known tales that many people assumed they were familiar. Despite having its origins in antiquity, the Ancient Bloodline War still has a significant impact on contemporary humanity in ways that are frequently disregarded or misinterpreted. The continuous struggle between forces that seek to preserve justice, truth, and divine order, and those that seek to disturb and corrupt, is how this conflict appears spiritually. The moral decline, social unrest, and pervasive spiritual confusion that seem to permeate many parts of the world today are manifestations of this tension. The echoes of this age-old conflict reverberate through the unseen conflicts people have within their own hearts. Conflicts over loyalty, identity, and purpose that stem from the blood in their veins. Throughout history, the cultural legacies of these ancient bloodlines have influenced societies, customs, and even hierarchies of power. The conflict between the divine and corrupt lineages, the spiritual legacy passed down through the generations, and the lingering effects of the NEPHILIM have all left subtle but enduring imprints on the collective consciousness. Myths, rituals, and symbols found in many cultures around the world frequently have deeper meanings connected to this never-ending struggle. Traces of this bloodline war subtly endure, influencing cultural identities and collective memory, whether in secret societies, religious iconography, or family stories. These indications are present in both ancient writings and the contemporary fascination with spiritual knowledge, power, and mystery. Many people think that the mixing of divine and corrupted bloodlines has left a permanent mark on the human genome. even though modern genetics may not fully understand the complexities of these ancient unions. According to this theory, the conflicts between the spiritual and physical realms are not merely symbolic, rather they are entwined with the essence of humanity. Characteristics, inclinations, and even disputes that emerge within families and communities may be remnants of this age-old conflict, transmitted through the generations as unspoken traditions that need to be unraveled. By encouraging people to look beyond superficial genetics and take into account the spiritual aspects ingrained in their bloodlines, this viewpoint encourages a closer examination of ancestry and identity. There are both covert and overt manifestations of this ongoing conflict in the modern world. The emergence of movements focusing on spiritual awakening or hidden knowledge, global crises, and societal upheavals could all be signs of a larger metaphysical conflict. Humanity has been exposed to forces that magnify both light and darkness, truth and deception, as a result of the development of technology, mass communication, and global interconnectedness. In light of this, people are urged to be mindful of the influences they let into their lives and to acknowledge that the age-old conflict between good and evil is far from resolved. It permeates every aspect of life and has an impact on politics, culture, and even interpersonal relationships. This covert conflict affects entire communities as well, frequently invisible beneath the surface of daily existence. This age-old struggle can have deeper spiritual roots than conflicts that appear to be purely political or social. Knowing this gives the difficulties that families, communities, and countries face a deeper meaning. It makes it possible to see past outward manifestations and acknowledge the spiritual forces that influence reality. People and communities can be empowered by this awareness to seek alignment with the divine purposes that have been in motion since the dawn of time and to resist corrupting influences. Viewers may start to doubt their own ancestry, their own hardships, and the influences influencing their lives as they consider these concepts. With ramifications that affect every facet of modern life, the Ancient Bloodline War is no longer merely a tale from the distant past. This knowledge encourages a more thorough pursuit of the truth, as well as an openness to the spiritual aspects that impact both the past and the present. It pushes everyone to think about their part in this enormous, invisible struggle and decide whether they want to be a part of the forces that uphold or undermine the holy heritage ingrained in human blood. A profound message for each of us today is woven deeply into our individual and collective spiritual journeys, making the story of the seed of the serpent more than just a far-off myth or a lost passage in old writings. Fundamentally, this story serves as a reminder that each person has the ability to decide which legacy, one based on dishonesty, division, and corruption, or one based on truth, reconciliation, and healing, to accept. An ongoing call for self-awareness and change is reflected in the conflict between opposing bloodlines that started so long ago. It pushes us to examine the trends and influences in our own lives, where we might have unintentionally inherited limitations, biases, or wounds, and to think about how we might overcome them. This age-old conflict emphasizes the important idea of choice. There is always hope for redemption and rebirth, regardless of how complicated or sinister the past may be. More than inherited conflict, the seed of the serpent symbolizes a spiritual condition that can be faced and resolved via inner awakening and deliberate effort. This concept encourages us to view ourselves as active contributors to our own destiny, rather than as helpless victims caught by it. The ability to identify the forces at play and make a decision toward light, integrity, and wholeness is the key to overcoming corruption, whether it be spiritual, emotional, or cultural. Furthermore, comprehending this tale encourages an optimistic view of human potential. It demonstrates that old divisions and curses are challenges to be overcome rather than lifelong penalties. This bloodline war's very existence emphasizes how crucial awareness and purposeful action are to changing the stories that have been passed down through the generations. It promotes a spiritual awakening that transcends guilt and anxiety, paving the way for reconciliation, forgiveness, and group healing. Anyone who is willing to confront their inner truth and the larger forces influencing the world can experience this awakening. It is not a far-off ideal. The seed of the serpent becomes a mirror reflecting our inner struggles and aspirations by relating this ancient conflict to our lives today. It challenges everyone to consider how their identity and decisions have been influenced by inherited narratives, whether they be family histories, cultural myths, or spiritual beliefs. Clarity and regaining personal power are the goals of this self-examination rather than condemnation. It inspires people to accept healing and change as continuous processes that have an impact on communities and even the overall trajectory of human history. In the end, this tale is an exhortation to break free from unconscious tendencies and take on the role of a conscious co-creator in the drama that is life. It serves as a reminder that with awareness, bravery, and the resolve to follow a higher path, we can change the legacy we bear. In this sense, the ancient seed of the serpent contains not only the memory of conflict, but also the promise of redemption, which each of us can fulfill in our own lives and in the world at large. Layers of hidden conflict, spiritual depth, and timeless truths that have been most vividly preserved in the Ethiopian Bible have been revealed through the ancient story of the seed of the serpent. This story forces us to reconsider our preconceived notions about our spiritual heritage, starting with the first prophecy in Genesis and continuing through the enigmatic beginnings of the NEPHILIM and the drama of bloodlines fighting throughout history. It unveils a hidden conflict that is intricately interwoven with human history and continues to influence the modern world. The Ethiopian Bible serves as a remarkable entryway to these truths, providing a deeper, more nuanced understanding than many Western texts do thanks to its distinct viewpoint and preserved wisdom. It encourages us to investigate the spiritual forces that are still at work both inside and outside of us, in addition to history. This story touches on the core of who we are and the decisions we must make. It is not merely about historical events or far-off characters. Beyond mythology, the Bloodline War is a potent metaphor and reality that inspires us to consider our own spiritual struggles as well as the future of humanity as a whole. It demands a higher level of consciousness, one that makes us aware of the power of invisible forces and the possibility of change via deliberate decision-making. Gaining insight from this legacy enables us to fight corruption, mend inherited wounds, and embrace a path toward unity and redemption. As this tale progresses, it becomes evident that we are all woven together by the strands of blood, spirit, and history to form a continuous saga. The revelations in the Ethiopian Bible exhort us to maintain our curiosity and vigilance, to look for truth beyond appearances, and to acknowledge the importance of the spiritual forces shaping our reality. This information is meant to empower people and illuminate the path to healing and restoration, which can have a profound impact on families, communities, and even entire countries. It is not intended to instill fear. You are welcome to participate further if this story has provoked a thought, a question, or a desire to learn more in you. Similar to the ancient stories themselves, this channel offers a forum for the supportive discussion, exploration, and understanding of these hidden truths. This information is kept current and useful by participating in the discussion, asking questions, and sharing your opinions. It creates a shared consciousness that respects the past while influencing the future. You can join a movement to unearth and recover lost history and spiritual wisdom by liking and sharing these videos. Every comment adds to the conversation and inspires others to wake up and see beyond conventional wisdom. For those who are prepared to question popular narratives and embrace the more profound enigmas of faith, identity, and fate, this is more than just a channel. As we come to the end of this chapter, think about this. How will you react if the blood in your veins bears the scars of a long-gone conflict? Will you choose to stay in the dark, or will you choose to see and change? The questions remain: encouraging, continued thought and discussion, even though the answers might not be obvious right away. This is only the start of a journey that extends well beyond our visual perception and is based on the never-ending conflict between division and unity, darkness and light. And each of us has the ability to influence the meaning and impact of this story for future generations as it develops.